Okay. Good morning or good evening. I believe I am live. Yep. At least that's what everything's showing me. Let me check the app and my profiles to see if I am still live. I believe I am live. Yep. So we're live. And today we are going to be going over. I'm just going to pull it up on my phone too, just in case you guys comment. It's a delay. Um, but we're going to be going over intermediate Python. Now, I've done this particular presentation a few times. I'm hoping that this version is better than the last, so let me know, um, especially if you've attended any of the other versions of this one. And for those of you who don't know, I'm Christina. I'm a data scientist, been doing it about 11 years, 11 plus years really. And I really like helping you guys learn how to code so you can be a part of the building of the technologies of the future. We're going to be um, diving into how do you code in a way that will kind of get you a job, really. So, in coding, there's really always the issue of, am I coding to be able to pass the interview? Is it standardized? Does it shows that I know what I am doing, versus that I just, took a few courses and I can code, but it's not really production ready type of coding, which is what a lot of people are looking for. And so, what we want to do is um, we want to really fix that, I guess, and try to help you figure out how to best study for um, these things. So, first, we have a few sessions. The first session is going to be because I'd want to assume that you've done a kind of introductory Python level. We're going to kind of jump right into looking at functions and arguments and things like that so that you can kind of understand from the top down, not the bottom up, because it's kind of like teaching you the plus sign instead of just teaching you 2 plus 2 is 4 and then working backwards. So we're going to be doing that. And if you um, I'll be posting links in the chat, as well as once we get to the practice session, I will have a slide of what you should try to practice and cover. So we're going to start with um, getting you guys' data set. So I don't know if you guys know, but there is a website. This website is called, hold on, slide over. Okay, Kaggle.com. Now, Kaggle data sets are pretty decent data sets. Oh, let me sign in. They're built for basically competitions and teaching people how to code. They're not um, too real world at all. Well, some of them kind of real world, but they're there to help you really understand how to use stuff. And they have their own version of how to teach you, data science, which is useful if you're getting started. But we're going to start off with just getting some of their code out of here. And we're going to use their Spaceship Titanic code. And then what we'll do is during the practice session, we'll use a little bit more real world data, which will come from YouTube statistics, and take a look at that. So, first, um, What we're going to do is you need to create an account. I've had my account for years and still haven't done a competition, but that will hopefully change. Um, so I think this is really cool. So what we want to come to is you want to sign in, you want to come to data, and what you're going to do is you're going to download the training set. We're not going to submit to this competition. We're not really going to do any data science in these sessions. What we're really trying to do is get your fundamental, I guess, where's my camera? Code understanding together so that you can get the stuff running and working. So this has tons of columns, tons of missing data. Well, not missing data, but tons of data to work with. There we go. There we go. Training set, 14 columns, and it's very small, but it'll do. What we're gonna do is we're just gonna download this, and since I already have it, it's downloaded. What you're gonna do after that is you're gonna go back to this Jupyter notebook, and we're just going to um, I'm gonna add a folder, and we're gonna just put this on my desktop, and we're gonna call this Weekend Bootcamp 2. So I'm trying to make sure you understand. Let's new folder. Uh, my inability to type early in the morning. Okay. All right. And what we're going to do then, let's just open the folder. Let's go to desktop. We can bootcamp to select. No, I don't want to save. Okay. There we go. So trust these authors. And now we're just going to upload a file into this folder. And honestly, that's probably easier if you go to your file manager and you just dump it in there. So I'm just going to go to my, just going to cut and paste that training file into my desktop in my Weekend 2 folder. All right. Now, I'm going to assume that you've already got your environment set up for pandas and working in that. If you don't, probably it's going to be easier for you to go to Google Colab and we'll set up for Python. But if you don't, Google Colab will have that already in there. You can just go here and spin up a notebook. I'm going to work in VS Code. And if you don't have the instructions on setting up your environment, I'll be sure to drop it during one of our breaks. I have a PDF that'll walk you through in a video on YouTube that'll help you get started. All right, so now we want, I'm just going to call this session 1.ipynd. There we go. So now we have an empty notebook. And with that, I pull up my notes so we can get started with session 1. So our session today is really going to be on, and let's create a markdown cell. And it's going to be on functions, arguments, and stuff like that. There, we got a nice title. So to start off with, we're going to discuss opening files and then why data scientists use pandas to open file, but we're going to, and we're going to use pandas for the purpose of opening this file. simply because it's easier. But we're going to go through what that would look like as well. So, um, a few things that would make your code look cleaner is if you actually save your file to variables so that you don't have to really change that file name everywhere you use it, but you just put file path there. So that's kind of the first thing. If you're working on a big project or presentation for your portfolio, you just want to have a file path variable. And to that file path variable, it is good to kind of save your file path. So I'm just going to copy, I'm going to paste, and this is Windows, so you're going to have to change these backslashes to be forward. I don't know why they copy them backwards like that. It is by far the most annoying thing about Windows, but you do what you have to do. And so there we go. Now, if you notice what it's doing now, let me make sure you can see this on the screen. Let me zoom in a bit and make it bigger. There we go. So I right clicked, I copy file path, and then I put the file path here, and then I change the slashes to forward slashes for backslashes. Now, one thing, see, losing my thought because I'm forgetting what I'm doing. Okay, so in Python, Python is made up of tons of different packages. Now, depending on the role you want, you may not be able to use some of them because of the performance speed that it takes, right? So for data scientists, typically we can use packages in our interviews um, because we're expected to do a lot more research, not necessarily production code. But for like machine learning engineers, they might not be able to use packages because they take too long. It really just depends on the company, but they'd have to write their code in like Python, Golang, or even C, and in order to get it to the speed of whatever the company needs. And for data analysts too, which is really the same as the data scientist in many ways, you can use packages. So but if you're doing software development, a lot of the packages for data scientists are irrelevant for you because you won't be using them. You need to know how to do things by hand. And so, one of the reasons why data scientists like pandas is because it extrapolates a lot of the things that we don't need to know how to do to get to the core of our job. And so, for example, with open file path, right? I need to call open brackets, so file path. So this is just bringing that variable, which a variable stores any amounts of information. We'll keep dive into the types that it stores, but it can store string, which is something between quotes. It can store a dictionary, which is exactly like a physical dictionary. When you open the book, you have the word that you look for the word and it has the definition. That's exactly what it is in code too. It can store a list, which is pretty much, you write your grocery list on a note, post-it note. That post-it note would be the list. And so you can do any of that in a variable. But for our purposes, we created one that is a string. Now, the good thing about being in something like VS Code is it's going to kind of tell you the different types of modes you can use. I actually don't know most of these modes. I just know write and read. And so we are going to read from this file and create a reader. And then we're just going to print reader dot read lines. And we're going to print the first five. Oh, we need to tell it what Python environment to use. So if you watch the previous tutorials I had about setting up your environment, you should already have one specific to analytics up. Mine is on 3.9 here. And so I'm just going to do that. It has all of my packages already installed. And I will go ahead and, yeah, I forgot to run this, um, put those directions to that video in the live chat. Actually, let me do that now. Okay, so it'll post to link. Let me post the. And thank you. I'm doing well. I'm a little sleepy. I couldn't get the live stream set up this morning, but it's good. So I posted that one to LinkedIn. Let me post a different one. I mean, I posted that one to YouTube. Let me post one to LinkedIn on this live stream. Um, yep. Let me put this comment here. And it's streaming to Twitter. All right. So that gives us two. Okay. So that gives that. If even though I'm posting the video because it's easier to find, if you go into the description, you'll find a link to the PDF instructions. I'm working on putting up a website so that it's easily Googleable. But okay, back to VS Code. So if we're looking at this file, if you notice, we put find give us the fifth line, right? So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 in Python, where coding starts at from 0 to whatever instead of 1. So the fifth line is going to be 4 when it comes to the fourth row, the fourth numbered ID in this code. So it pulls that out. This is actually difficult to parse in Python for a data scientist, which is why we don't typically do this. And honestly, even in your interviews, you won't be asked to likely open a file. And so this is why um, data scientists instead use pandas, because pandas is going to get you, yeah, this easier, right? And so it's important that um, you use the standard import statements for the packages in your projects. The reason being is just a standard. And if you're working on a team, the team member has to come in and you imported pandas as something that pandas should not be imported as, or Dask, or whatever you're working with, it's very hard to come in and help with your code or to extend it because I have to remember whatever unique import you're doing. So pandas is always imported as PD. Honestly, if I see someone and they, oh, I forget I had the autofill. I have an autofill on. I don't know who invented that, but I like them. But if you in your portfolio project, if you're not doing it in the standard method, I'm kind of skipping your profile because I have to reteach you how to do that. And it's just something I expect you to come into the workplace knowing the standard way to import files. And so this is now fully imported, and I can do the same thing, df. Um, and actually, I'm going to just import row 5. Oh, 4, 5. There we go. Same thing. Now, but also, and if you notice, it's all nice and ordered in columns with the headers above it. It's so pretty. You can also come here and just do head, right? And it's going to give you the first 5 rows. I believe if I do this, it'll give me the first 10, right? Um, hold on. Yeah, I think 10 goes in here. It's been a while since I've had to do this. 10 goes somewhere. Yeah, there we go. 0 through 9, 10. There we go. Um, so yeah, this gives us a nice clean look at our data. And what we're going to do from here is we're going to, um, where's my notes? We're going to look at how do we get columns. Now, the hard thing about working in packages is the syntax between a native Python code and the package code can be different. And you might forget that in your interview. And I used to forget that all the time. So I'd have an interview in plain Python and try to use pandas, and it was just not working because the syntax is different. If they let you check the syntax, please do that. And actually, let me teach you how to do that now while we're talking about it. So let's bring this one back up, and we're gonna go to Python. Um, well, this is pandas, and then we have Python documentation. Now, the pandas documentation is much easier to use. I'm not gonna lie. And let's talk about the difference between this. So, usually, you're gonna have, especially for packages, getting started, which will teach you how to install it in your environment. You have kind of a user guide, which is going to teach you by section or features of the most common things. And then you have an API reference, which will reference each of the different methods that they actually have built in. And you can look by method. Honestly, when you Google it and you put what you're looking for, it'll usually pop up. Not all the time, though. Now, if you're looking at the Python documentation, it's it's a little different. It's much more difficult to navigate, and that's because it's really for um, developers, but they do still have their beginner's guide, and they're going to have their PIP. So PIP is really the standard. How do they expect you to write Python code? How many lines after import so that it looks nice and friendly to human eyes to easily use and go into your code? And so a lot of companies have strict PEP standards, some don't have any, and but that's fine. But on their beginner guide, they're going to have different ones for non-code programmers, which I think was cool of them to do. And they have all of the resources that you could possibly have on the internet that I've at least heard of. And they'll have a collection of cheat sheets and things, which I really like because cheat sheets saved my life more than a few times, right? But they'll have that collection there. Now, what you'll need to do, because this is a Python, it's not really a package, it's more of the library of Python coding language, you'll have references to built-in things here that you would be able to use. All right, now back to VS Code. So we're going to use a bit of pandas to look at data types, okay? So in Python, we have a few data types. Actually, I'm going to go back here while I'm looking at it. So these are methods in Pythons for using data types. As far as data types, you can have numbers, you can have um, Boolean operators. Not that's not data type. What I'm going to talk about. Oh, sorry. Um, you're going to have dictionaries, lists, um, tuples, strings, sets. There's a ton of them. Typically, especially in your early years of coding, you're probably only using a subset of those, depending on where you're working. And there's a syntax around all of them, right? So here, and the reason why I went ahead and imported using Python so we can have pandas, so that we can have some real world data, is we're going to look first at the name, right? And we can do it and run it here. I mean, it's not, you just call it, but again, I'm gearing this toward intermediate Python for people getting into data science and analytics. And so we'll be jumping back and forth between native and pandas. But here, you get the names. These names are of a data type called object. And object is really a string in terms of what we're talking about. It can be an assortment of letters, numbers, symbols, but they're basically stored between two quotation marks. And so I have all of these names. And for example, if I put 333 between quotation marks, this is not a number. So this, if I did this plus um, 345, I'm going to get this. If I do 333 plus 345, I'm going to get this. So this, when it's between quotes, it's just going to concatenate, which is a bullet point here for terminology. What it really means to do is to put them together, but to not to kind of merge them together, but not change anything. If I put a plus sign and there's no quotes around these numbers, it's going to assume that you want them to add things together as an addition. And so it's going to be 678 in terms of what that would be. So what I'm going to do is we're going to actually convert this column of names into a list so that we can run a regular Python function on it. Again, I'm only using pandas to import stuff because it's easier for me to explain. Um, so here, I am going to create a variable, and that variable is going to be called name. Now, in Python, it is important that you give your variables names that mean something. In typical like boot camp stuff, you're gonna hear them name it X, Y, Z, F, beta, alpha. Like, but in the context of your coding project where you might have a team, they kind of need to track what's in there and know what's going on. And so typically you're gonna name it what it is in terms of variable names. Or again, when you get to more productionized code, and we'll get to that when we get into more of like my machine learning classes, we can kind of name it based on the timestamp, the model version, and it can name itself dynamically using F strings, which we'll get to sometime in this lesson, but we won't use for that purpose. So I'm going to have a df name, and I'm going to convert the data type. So right now, df name is what's called a panda series, right? Um, it's a series object, right? Full of stuff. That's not a that's a pandas data type, and it is not a Python data type. If I want it to be a Python data type, I'm going to need to convert a series into a list. For most purposes, they are exactly the same thing. It's just what does the library recognize that it's able to do, and what methods can be operated on um, for it. And I keep forgetting my camera's here and I'm looking at my computer screen. Apologies. But here, I'm just going to do that and we're going to create it a list. It's going to be called name, which is great. So now we have a list. It is a variable. Um, I should be able to do something like D type. Actually, that might be pandas. Yeah. So this is a pandas. But anyway, it says it's a list object now, which is what I was going for, trying to pull up. But this is pandas. So if I were to do, um, yeah, it's a NumPy. See, I'm confusing NumPy with pandas and Python, and this is what I mean. NumPy is in here. It's installed. We imported it, but you get what I mean. That's why we kind of install everything together in the first place. The confusion in my mind. Okay, so let's talk about function creating. So a function is really the language of making something change itself. So into something else. Really like it's a tool for transformation. Think of it as like a pot, right? You're cooking and you might have garlic, onions, peppers, and some burger meat, and all of that needs to go into the pot. And when it comes out, you have tacos. Well, you want tacos these days in there too. Don't forget the season. But you'll have tacos. And so a function really is a place to bring a lot of different things together and perform actions on. If you're talking, my cooking analogy, the raw meat is becoming cooked meat or medium rare meat. The garlic is, you know, in my case, getting burned, and the onions are, supposed to be becoming translucent, and they all have different things that are expected to transform about them in the pot. And so your function is a pot. But in our case, because we have a programming language, you get to name your pots, right? I don't name my actual kitchen pots, but actually, now that I think about it, that might be hilarious. Um, but anyway, we're going to name our functions so that we can call our functions anytime we need them, right? So you might even think of it as like a Vitamix. A Vitamix has different buttons. Each button performs a different function, and this product Vitamix has a name. And if I need someone to bring me my Vitamix, I can call it by Vitamix instead of random thingy over there that you might find in the corner of the area. Yeah, you can just call it by its name. And everyone knows what it is. It's reusable, so it can get washed out, and you can put more stuff in it and use it as much as you want. So that's why we're creating functions. It allows us to reproduce, replicate, call things as we need it, which is fantastic. So, um, cool. Now, our function, we're going to call it add username. Turn off. Okay. Okay. Add underscore username. Now, inside of this, I can use X. It's fine. I mean, it's fine because it's more of a function call. But and I'm going to just convert all of my names to uppercase. And so I'm going to say return X dot upper and plus, and I'm going to add an exclamation mark, right? Um, Now I'm going to come back over here to the Python uh, library, and actually we're in version 3.9, so I'm going to take this down a version, and I'm going to, and even though I know this hasn't changed, we're going to look for upper, and we're going to click go. So we're working on a string. Remember I said built-in type, we're working on a string. We're going to click string upper. And so this is going to tell us exactly what it does. So string upper, it says return a copy of a string with all the cased characters converted to uppercase. So I can use upper, um, and then it can check if it is upper. If I use like is upper, it will be true or false. I love that I have built-in true and false because if you're in a um, Python, what is it, interview question thingy, you can use that to check the case, which is very useful for you to know or be able to find. But anyway, this is what we're using. We could have came here and kind of searched for keywords like uppercase. It'll pull up, and I'm going to use that, and it's going to go from upper lowercase regular naming to more than that. But what we're going to do is we're going to save this. So we ran this column with Shift Enter, and it's going to save it. Remember, when you add a plus sign, like we did up here, it's just going to add it to the end. Add it to the end. And so now we're going to call this by name. And we're going to convert one row of name um, into uppercase. That's what we were doing. Yep. Okay. So we're going to say add, and we're going to say username, and I'm going to say name, and I want the one in position 2, which is 012. So it's the third object. And we're just going to press enter. So if we look here, it is now all uppercase. And if we look here, 012 is the third one. It's converted from that into this uppercase. Now, it is normally best to store this in a variable for reuse later. Reuse later if you need it, especially if you're dynamically, let's say, you have a social media profile and that user is updating their username. Well, they're going to pull that from whatever data stream and update the database, and they're going to call it everywhere their code using that same variable name. And so this would be, you can call it username if you want. Um, and there you go. It's saved. And everyone knows what it is. They know what the variable is calling, and you're good to go. But we can essentially do that for any piece of the code that we have. Next, we're going to look at what else we can do. And we're going to talk about saving these to a list. So a list can store a lot of different things, and you could essentially create a program that goes to each location in the list and runs or does something with that operation. Not, it can be bad and best practices depending on what type of thing you're working on. But let's say I wanted to create a pizza order, and this is not the best way to do this, but we're going to use an example. So I can say add username. I'm going to say in the names list, position two, um, and I'm going to say they want cheese on their pizza. And now I have a list that I can iterate through to kind of pull up the ingredients on that order. Now, let's talk through nested lists. Nested functions. Nested functions um, are the beginnings of creating an object for object-oriented programming. And in data science, knowing how to do this is going to make your profile stand up. A lot of data stand out. A lot of data scientists don't know object-oriented programming because they weren't necessarily trained in it. That is changing rapidly these days versus when I got started. So it's good to know if you're going into software development, knowing object-oriented programming is um, everything you need for a job. That we're just going to cover some of the basics of it, and if we have time, we'll cover classes and really that whole spiel at the end if there's still time left today. So we're going to create an object called a user, and we're just going to define user, right? And this user is just, again, it's just a function. And we're going to give it args and quarks, which is just a shortcut for saying, I don't know how many things need to get passed into this thing, but you're just going to pass all of them that come into the function call. But essentially, we don't know. I'm missing yeah. It's again, you don't really do this. I'm doing it because it simplifies my day to day. But normally, you want to, for security reasons, really just make sure that what you want to call is called there and nothing else is getting passed and something happens. Again, that's what code review is for with people who specialize in code quality. But not all companies have code quality control, especially if you're starting out in a startup type company. Oftentimes, your code is what's going into production. And a lot of people, including me, got their start in kind of small labs, small startups, which it's easier and or used to be easier. The job market now is insane. But it was cool. It was easy. Um, but anyway, so what we're going to do is we're going to copy our function here. Now, you always want to make sure that your functions are one tab in or four spaces. That's the standard Python nomenclature or syntax nomenclature. Syntax. And what we're going to do is you return it in one line because it's really a one line function. Now, you can call this like u equals and return u, but since the standard nomenclature is that since this is a simple function and not a complex function, that you just put the return in one line here to simplify your code down. Both will work. Both will work. You'll see it both ways. But also, these kind of sort of details things help or what someone experiences looking at in your profile when they're determining you against every other profile they're looking at. How much additional training do they need to get you to write production code? Now, I am going to give an age parameter here. And so we're going to say df and include age, and we're going to say a for age. And all we're going to do is we're going to now say return. We're going to say a. We're going to make them 5 years older because I'm like that. And that's good, right? And what else we'll do is while we're doing this, we're going to create a doc string. So in code, if no one knows what your code does, it is very confusing if you move to a different part of the project in a company and they have to track you down. So you can just always leave a doc string. This function does X, Y, Z, and B, something simple, unless you need something more complex. But you can just put a doc string there and document your functions. Now, we're going to return this in a nice little pretty way using F strings. And we're going to say F. We're going to say the user name is, and actually this doesn't need a return statement. I just put it in there for fun, I think, when I did this. Yeah, we don't need a user, we don't need this return statement. All functions don't need a return statement. What we'll do is we'll do that in the function call. Okay. So what I'm going to go now is go back up to this name. And I'm just going to put age, and I'm going to say it's going to be a list. I'm going to have df. I'm going to have age. And that's because we go here, and we have age here, and we'll just call it and convert it into a Python list for the purposes of this tutorial. Now, if I call user if I do this, I don't know if y'all can guess what will happen. If I do this and I do this, nothing happens. Why do you think? Ooh. Well, mostly because I didn't tell it to do anything. Coding the joy, right? Then let's go back. We'll delete my notes. This is why you have notes for when you're up this early in the morning trying to teach code. All right. So I called user. I passed it name one, which was name one and age, but I did args and quarks, right? And so it honestly doesn't know where things need to get passed to. And I also didn't call them to be run, right? And so what do you want to do? I'm going to go down here. I'm going to say add username, and I'm going to say X, and I'm going to say include age, and I'm going to say A, right? And excuse me. I'm gonna have to write out more detailed notes. Earlier I have class. because my brain is like, you know what this is doing. Why are you trying to talk about it? Um, that's fine. So if you notice these are underlined, that's because I don't call A and I don't call X. I'm pretty sure I could pass R's here, but it would be, I don't know, I feel like that would be like the wrong syntax, but I don't have the words for it. Yeah, that's what I mean. Okay, so what we'll do, we'll go back to here. We're going to pass in X. I'm going to pass in A, and they're going to take X and A. We're going to take X, and we're going to take an A. I'm going to run that function again. I'm going to run this function. Um, let's do print statement. Let's try it one more time. There we go. Whew, early. In this context, guys, I'm more of a, well, not now. Well, I'm turning into more of an architect and working on like running teams. Me and I'm not doing basic Python at the moment. Your career will change a lot of what coding you do. I would like to get back into a lot of this type of coding and algorithm development. It would be really cool to make a very useful machine learning algorithm um, used by people, but that day is not today. Now, we're going to talk about F strings. The reason we're going to talk about F strings is because um, F strings are useful. We're going to try to do a print statement, an F string statement here. So what we'll do is we'll do a print statement. We don't need to. Yeah, we'll just put it in the function. I won't do it outside the function. We'll put it into the function. So we'll do F. Okay, we're going to say the user. And the cool thing about F string is you just have to put little curly brackets here. Is we're going to put this function here in the curly brackets. All right. We're going to need a, that does not go in the curly brackets. That goes outside the curly brackets. And there's going to be a quotation mark here. And so it's all closed up. And that's really the current F string syntax. There's probably 3 different versions before this one. And you'll see all of them in code. And I think there has to be like a separate 30-minute session on what do all these F strings mean if you're doing, like if you're working on coding like Python version 3.6 or, well, we're not on 2 anymore, so that's great. But, early 3 versions. And there you go. It takes everything literal. So there's no space here. You say you want a space here. And I am going to move my exclamation mark to here to make it make more sense. Let's try that again. Now, it's 3.0 years old. And that is because this has 3.0. If I want to change that, I can look for a function for rounding. And so what I'd have to go do is I can see, hey, rounding is math. Do they have a rounding function? So we have a few of them. We have around a number in digits precisions after the decimal point. We can do, let's look at the big list. They have ceiling, round down, round up. I would want to round up. And they have fraction round. There's a lot. But if you wanted to, what would you do? Well, let's try a few of these and see what they do actually. So we'll start with round up. Round away from the 0 if last digit after running towards 0 would be 0, 1, 1, 5. So let's try that. Sometimes they have examples, sometimes they don't. This is the lot in life of trying to do it. but it's fine. Look at all these mathological functions. Okay, so what we do is we say round, say up, and see what it gets us. We might have to import math. Hold on. No, it's built in. Python data type built in, decimal fixed point. Nope, we're going to have to import from decimal. There we go. So decimal module, and so we want to add an import statement. That's fine. It's installed with the regular package, but you just need to import it. All right. It's still not wound up today. Guess this is why I shouldn't stray from my notes. I don't think it'll run. Yeah, not defined. But I imported decimal. Round. Same thing. Okay. Huh. Well, yeah, I imported as. Okay, what we're going to do is Google that error because it's too early in the morning for this. Boop. Don't stray from your notes. Write down it's not defined. So what we'll do is go to Google. And put my language. Okay, maybe it wants me to do that, but I imported all of them. Like star imports everything. But I don't. Did I import the wrong tag? Another round. Okay, maybe I don't need to import it. Let's try that. Yeah, it rounded it, but why? It's too early in the morning to read complex documentation. Not truncating. Round up, right? Because I can use ceiling, yeah. If I actually wanted to use import from rounding. Oh, I imported the wrong package. Let's do that one. Phone rounding. I'm thinking it's a version issue. It's a version. So I should be able to. I don't know. It's too early, and I didn't check all of this because this was impromptu. Import decimal, get decimal context. From decimal, import decimal. Oh yeah, this is the really best website for Python because they check their code by people who've worked on the actual Python package and like they are actual developers, right? So these guys are going to be the best people to work with. Yeah. So anyway, we've been doing this for nigh on an hour. I'm going to stop here and I'm going to give you guys some practice work. And I'm going to pull that up and let's do that. So session one, you're going to use YouTube stats, training stats, code. No, not data card. No, hold on, go back, go back. Yeah, we're going to use that for the video stats. Um, if you notice, we have videos from different countries, and all of them have different categories of data. It's still relatively small. So what you're going to do is, and let me put this into a slide for everyone to easily see. Go to session one. Um, and your steps are going to be download YouTube video stats data set. And then you're going to import it using pandas. And then you're going to create a function that changes the title to lower case and and multiplies the views. Right, there is views. Let me check. Yeah, we want the views. We want to multiply the views by 5. All right, and you're going to do that for just one. You can choose any row you want. All right, and what we're going to do is we're going to present. Let me move this over here, and we're going to all right, present, and let's put on some beads. And a timer. Mhm. We're gonna give you guys 20 minutes. I'm actually give you guys 10 minutes. Y'all got this. Let me see if I have a pop-up timer. Yeah. I just realized I was muted. No. Why? Okay. We're going to caption over what just happened really quickly before break. Um, Goodness. It's one of those days. So I walked through how to change and update and edit the function for use to do what I asked in the little the to-do list of stuff. And then I explained what a key error was. And the key error is basically you ain't on the list, you're not VIP. You gave me the wrong name. You can go back and check that. And so I went back and edited that. It's kind of like I like keeping errors in my training sessions because I run into them every day, normally on different stuff. And I make having time to make a perfect non-error based lesson is harder than just letting you walk through my brain as I'm trying to refigure out how I do stuff without thinking about it. So yeah, just copy, check that your code matched my code or at least got the same type of results as my code and go from there. I'm not even on the screen, am I? Goodness. Live streaming. I will get used to this one day. Yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna put back on the break intermission camera thingy and I will check my comments more frequently. Okay, I should no longer be muted. Hmm, One Saturday. Okay, we are going to start session two, which is going to dive more into understanding of scope and variables and things like that. So, um, yeah, let's talk about it. I posted links in the comment sections on the platforms, and they're really links for anything function related that you might need to know. And I'm going to pull up one on scope now. And at least I was going to pull up one on scope. There we go. Again, one of my favorite resources. So when we're talking about scope, right? Scope means the area of a code in which something can run, right? Or in the better definition of mine is the scope of a name defines the area of a program in which you can unambiguously access that name, such as variables, functions, objects on it. A name will only be visible to and accessible by the code in this scope. So a lot of different programming languages have different types of scope, and we mostly have a global and a local scope in Python, which is so much so. So you're going to, for example, we are going to give something a name, and we're going to look at the scope in regards to functions. So import statements are like a global scope we can use anywhere in the code. Um, but where you define certain things will determine where you can access it. And so these are the different types of scope: local, enclosed, and global. For the most, and built in. So built in would be kind of like built into the library. Like I can call it, and it's just there. That's how I like to think about it. Built in, cabinets are just in the house. They're not removable, or you can't change the location of your cabinets unless you completely broke it down and rewrote everything. Um, we're going to focus on local and global. I think they're the easiest to understand. And so if we're talking about um, our code, right? If I were to create a variable z, and I'm going to call it um, chicken nuggets. All right. This variable z is defined, because we have define, this is defined, inside of this function video. And if I were to come here and say print z, you can go ahead and notice that z is not defined. If I run this, the name area of z is not defined, but you're like, z is right here. That might be true, but the scope is wrong. Z is defined within that function, so it has a local scope where it can only run inside of that function. It cannot run externally. And this is important because if you're trying to get stuff to run externally and it's not meant to, you're just going to have all kinds of problems. So if I were to move this inside of this function and I were to call my function, see if you notice the color changed, It recognizes it's in the same scope. If I were to call it, it's going to print chicken nuggets. Now, that same token, when we're talking about um, global scope. Global scope is anything out here. I can call title inside of my function, and I can call title outside of my function. And I'll show you what I mean. So let's go ahead and I'm going to define chicken nuggets here. And I'm going to say print chicken nuggets so that I can give you a basic example. Oh, this is both still print chicken nuggets. Define chicken nuggets outside of the function and make sure it's lined up. Okay. There, it prints chicken nuggets. Now, what do I mean? Title can be called inside of this function, even though I didn't pass it as a parameter. Well, title and views are lists with a global namespace, a global area, because it's not defined inside of a function. It's defined kind of in the code file. And what we can do then is say here, title, I can say print. We're just going to put title. I'm going to say 1. Actually, let's say 5. I haven't seen 5, but it's 5. All right. So now I'm going to do that. I'm going to call my function because, again, if I just run it like this, since I didn't call it, it doesn't know that I want it. It doesn't know that I need it to go. I didn't press the on button, right? Calling is like pressing the on button on the Vitamix. And now 2 weeks with the iPhone X is the 5th video title. And I can go up to look at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. And if I scroll over, hold on. There we go. So the reason, however, that we typically don't pass in global variables into the function, I mean, we can. It's just, I feel like it will just cause all kind of issues. So I just learned that if I wanted to use it in the function, just pass the parameter into the function. You can call something globally and run it locally. That's fine in certain contexts. Just be careful how you use it in your code and just make sure your function and how it's created makes sense as well. Um, cool. That is scope. And if we go back to here, you see that name error again is not defined. It just, if you know you put it there, it's normally just in the wrong scope of where you're trying to call it. And there's just a good and a bad way to fix it. And that'll have to be like an advanced Python class because my goal is to get you to hopefully enough, I guess, quality enough code to get past an entry level interview and not, these 4 years plus type things, though that depends on the role because some of them shouldn't say 4 years plus, but I digress to the job market. All right, so that's scope. What else we're going to talk about? Okay, let's get a little bit more into our lists, dictionaries, tuples, sets, and strings. Whoa, buddy boy. Okay, let me get that code pulled up. Keeps pulling up in the wrong place. Let's try this again. Okay. And there we go. So let me get a new. All right. So what are we going to be talking about? Variables, list, dictionaries, tuples, sets, strings. And it is kind of important that you know when and the differences between these because different types and styles of programming, such as object oriented or dynamic programming, all use these things differently, and some really don't use them that often as you would think. Yeah. Okay. Let me. That's not what I wanted to do. Go back to the streaming. Just double checking that I am unmuted. Oh, what's that? All right. So we're going to take a look at some stuff. So we are going to decorate a pizza or put toppings on a pizza. We're going to make a pizza virtually in my head for the moment. Actually, maybe not. Let's go back to the spaceship data. I think I did the pizza because that day I was really thinking about pizza. So let's create a list of expenses, I think. Going off script again. All right, this is not great. This is not great at all. I can't help myself. All right, so we're going to create destinations. And destinations is going to be a list. Okay? And you can define a list in two ways. Earlier, you decided me do it like this. I could have done it the other way. I just, I don't know. I learned that when I'm converting, I just use the kind of actual spelled out list. But if I'm just creating an empty list, the brackets is fine. Um, Actually, I don't know really the difference between that. It's just how I learned it. Fascinating questions to ask yourself, huh? So we are going to get a unique set of values from destinations. All right. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to look up unique, see if they have something. They do have enumerate and unique. So this is a class that can tell me how many of something unique I can get if I enumerate it. But I don't really need the class enumerate. I was gonna use the method. So hold on, let's go back. And we're gonna say enumerate. Okay, there, see, it pulled up. And it's gonna give me the number of unique, um, well, actually it's gonna give me the position what I'm talking about. There's words coming out of my mouth that make no sense. Okay, let's not do that. Let's go back to I know what I'm doing. I swear. Let's do this. So in our data set, and again, we haven't imported anything. So let's go back and do some basic stuff. So let's import pandas as PD. Here we go. And And again, I forget how to use my bookmark, but yeah, it never passes video. Okay. We are going to import our, we're going to just grab our file paths. And there we go. Make sure analytics is there. Loading my environment. And it ran. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to go back to here so I don't have to look at my run the head function. I overwrote it. Let's do this thing. And I can do head. I can also do columns because what I'm looking for is column names. This gives me all my column names. And so we're going to look at destination, right? I want to know the unique set of all destinations available to me. There are a few different ways to do this. There's some in pandas, there's going to be some in Python. And you kind of need to remember, again, what package you're using versus the native language. Looking at it earlier, I tried to use NumPy. Even though it's imported, it wasn't like, set up right to use NumPy. My brain is all confused with all of them because they're all kind of mushed together in there now. And I just expect it to work. So, DF, you can do it like this. Um, you can do it like this. I typically don't. I forgot why, but you can do something like this. It's equal. So if you notice here, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 destinations. One is a null destination, but there are 4 unique destinations available to me. And actually, I'm going to do this the preferred method. And this basically creates a set that cannot be changed of all unique destinations. Now, see, Saturdays. Hey, all set. And I'm going to save this set to destinations. And I'm going to just put that as lowercase. Now, a set is really just going to be, you know, how you have the Venn diagrams. Everything goes in this set, everything goes in that set. What's between these two sets is that, and fairly easy to use. Now, I think unique that I'm thinking about is going to be a built-in pandas structure. And we're not going to get into for loops now. We're going to wait on for loops. For loops is the next section, so we'll do this the next section. That's why you don't go off script. Actually, let's try and see. Shake it off. Shake, shake, shake. I like shakes. They're delicious. What am I doing? This is why you don't go off script. Okay. So now I have a unique set of destinations, right? I might want to have this set, but this set can also be converted into a list. So we can actually also do this, and it changes what I'm able to do to it. So let's look at this. We have destination and we have D, which is a list of destination. What is really the differences between them? So let's look at destination. I want to, let's say, append. I'm going to add a new one. I'm going to call it Earth. And I really should give that a better name because I can't spell uncovered. So set has no attribute append. But what about if I look at D? So that means attribute means, I'm sorry, but that's not really something that we can see that is characteristics of what we're describing. And that actually, I'm wearing a pink shirt. The attribute of the shirt is pink. It was given its dyed in there. I can't say it's orange. So let's do this. If I want to do that and I want to append, yeah, it worked. So why did it work? Well, we're going to use big computer science words, and it's called mutability and immutability. So a list, you can add things to that list. You can take things off of that list, but a set is really a set. It's not changeable. Like it is what it is. It's going to be that way. Just like crayons come in a 12-pack box. It is the set of the 12-pack classic crayon box. It doesn't come in anything else. Um, uh, you can't, add other stuff into the box. It just won't fit, right? So that's kind of a set. A list is you can add, change, update values as you need, um, which is probably why you'll end up using lists more often because of that extendability, right? Now, if we want to pull up a reference to these built-in types, we can do that too. So list, that's not right. I know that's not the right page. So they have a whole section of data structures. So list using lists as stacks, using lists as queues, list comprehensions, nested comprehensions. Now, stacks and queues, I'm going to consider that an advanced topic mostly because I've never run into those questions on a data science related coding interview. I have on software engineering, but again, we're not in there. There's reasons I'm not a software engineer. Uh, but it gives us a list of it gives us yeah, a list of every single thing you can do with this particular data type, and it gives us examples. Now stacks, and I guess I can just explain the concept. Um, when you have a lot of items in a row, or even really a queue, like you're lined up and you're waiting your turn, and you're waiting to process everything in. With a queue, it's like first in, last out, right? Or you can do first in, first out. But you can basically append something to it, pop the other thing off, use it, and basically it's gone, and you just keep going and adding stuff to it. It's a methodology used in a bunch of different things. You also have sets here. If you notice, a set is just pretty much a immutable list. It can't really do a lot of the same things. It can be used as set in this such. You don't want to use curly brackets here because that'll create a dictionary. That's very important. I know when you see it, it's going to be in the curly brackets, but it's just I don't. You're running out of brackets to put stuff in that's unique. So they opted to give it the dictionary one, but you just want to define it as a set. Now, you can actually check objects in a set, just like you can check objects in a list, which is very important. Like if you need to know if something is in a set so you can do something to it, you can do those checks. And then you have dictionaries, you have tuples. I don't ever actually use tuples. And it's probably a shame too. They're also immutable. They're used more, I think, in dynamic programming because you just want to process everything through. But I actually haven't had a lot of chances to do it. But I do know Real Python has a tutorial I went through once that was really interesting and easy to follow. And then dictionaries is what much more common. It just maps key pair values just like an actual dictionary. And so let's get back to coding some stuff. All right. So what we're gonna do is we're looking at destinations. We have the destination list, which is great. And what does my code say? We're going to return a subset of this list. So for example, I want rows 4. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. It'll be the 5th object. I want to include that. And I want everything up to 12. So it'll be um, uh, include 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. It will not include 12. So if I want to include 11, I put 12. If I want to include 10 but not 11, I put 11. So let me show you what I mean. I broke something. Oh, I turned, yeah, I did that incorrectly. Let's do it this way. Um, I turned the list from the set, and so there's only 4 objects in there. And so 4 would be the earth object that I added. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to come here and say DF, and we're going to say destination. All right. And we're gonna make it the full list of as a capital D. So key error. Remember, it's not on the list. You're not on the VIP. What are you talking about? We have nothing like that. You either named it wrong or you called the wrong file. There we go. So now it's saying, great, it's present. And then now I can do this. And these are the values 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There you go. Now, this is not the, I guess, only way to do it now. You have, let me make sure that's not pandas. Before I say it, see, is this what I mean? Okay, yeah, that's pandas, okay. Whew. We won't cover it then, but you have these options to kind of cut lists. And now we're going to do something cool, which is going to be reversing the list. So if you notice, this is at the bottom, now it's at the top. You can also do dot reverse, I believe, if we go to remove, pop, index, sort, count. Yep, reverse. It does the same thing. So I'll take that. I want that subset. I want to reverse. Reverse. Now this is just a method call. Method of reverse. See, is there? Um, and see if I can print it out. Christina versus the correct syntax. I'm thinking it doesn't like me subsetting. I'm going to call this out. Yeah, it's an in-place reverse. Oh, okay, I need to call it after. Sending me all the different syntax. Let's do this again. So many different syntax, I swear. And trying to show you the way I do it in a way that you can do it is very yeah, it's reverse. And I reversed it so many times I screwed up my list. Because it does everything in memory in place. Okay, so if I want to check if Earth is in my list, I can go Earth, and I can just say is it in, and I can say D, and it's going to say false. So I can use that as a condition. If Earth is in destinations, then order some pizza. I don't know. Pizza's not today. All right. I can always check the length of my list or even my data frame. And so we can check the length here. So it's 8,693 rows. If I want to check, I can also check the shape, but that is more of a data frame thing. So I'm not going to go over it. You can check the length of a string itself. So let's say I want to check the length of whatever is in D1. It is 11 long. So what we can do is we can check this, and it says it includes the spaces. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So including spaces, it's 11 characters long. It doesn't matter if I call it as a subsection of that list or if I call it as an actual string itself. Um, in this manner, it'll still give me 11. Now, I can actually do something interesting, and we're going to get rid of some spaces. And honestly, this is probably one of those things that's really useful in coding interviews because it might give you a list of strings that are numbers and you need to like add them together. If you remove the spaces and then convert them to a number, your life is so much easier. Um, so this adds a space in that manner to it. And this would remove that space. Now, if I want to strip all the spaces away, um, I'm forgetting something. These are regular expressions. We're going to skip over that for now. Later on, I cannot read this documentation this early in the morning, so what we're going to do Google it. Yeah. Leading and ending. I want to replace all. Yeah. There we go. And we'll just put this here. It's a string, sorry. So it's looking for, and actually I can pull that documentation up. I'll probably go to the easier website to read at this early time in the day. So it takes the old value and it takes the new value. Oh, I'm putting it in there wrong. So if I want to do this, so I have my sentence and I want to replace it with what? And I didn't tell it what to replace with what. So I want to replace the strings with no strings. Whew. If they tell you to replace all the sevens or fives in something, there you go. Convert it to a string, do the replacement, change it back to a number. We'll get to that later today. if I'm still cognizant. Mhm. All right. Now we're going to get into, we talked a lot about sets and um, list, and we haven't got to dictionaries, but we'll get there. We're going to kind of look at extending these conditions for you. So we're going to look at if and else statements, because what else are you going to look at in life? And if else statements are important. All right, if else statements. Oh, and while we're at it, join my newsletter. I send out stuff once a week on AI, data science, careers, um, etc. So please join if you found anything that I'm saying remotely valuable. I try to do these once a month for free and paid subscribers. Paid gets more machine learning specific stuff, um, but free gets Python, and I'm coming up with my SQL soon, and probably my R after that. And yeah, come have fun with me. Um, okay, so we went through that. If else statements is where we're at. Um, and when do I get to dictionaries? Soon. Okay, so we're going to do if else first, and then we'll get to dictionaries. And we're going to, and the reason why you have if else statements, just like we're going to parse through our data, it's really to kind of do cooler stuff, because you can't just have basic code if you're going to get some interesting thing out of it. I'm at a loss for words. Um, okay. We're going to check if Jupiter is a planet. Why would we do that? um, let's look at the data set. So we're going to look at home planet. All right. So let's look at home planet, and let's look at the unique set of values in home planet. So let's come here. And let's copy this, because again, I'm a coder, I'm not an English major. My ability to spell stuff consistently is low. All right, so we have home planet, right? And I want the set of all unique values. So we're just going to write set right around here. And so we have Earth, Europa, Mars, and no. And so if, for example, and this is going to be a very crude example because I'm not building a software application, but let's say your app only would allow people from these three planets onto the app, and you're from Jupiter, and you try to put that in there, it's like, nope, you can't be from planet Jupiter. And so what we'll do is we'll do a check. We're going to say, you basically do a string check on the input or the drop down box, or make sure that it's not possible to do what you don't want to do. But we're just going to do something basic. We're going to say if Jupiter and planet, and we haven't created planet, we haven't created a variable list for that, and then else if Mars and planet, and we're going to say else. So these are conditional statements, right? These statements are basically saying if this, then that, if that, then this, and you're putting a condition in coding language for it. So let's first fix this. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create a variable called planet. In that variable called planet, we're going to assign the data frame df.homeplanet. We're going to convert that data frame, which is a pandas data structure, into a Python structure called a list. And actually, it's not a data frame, it's a panda series into a data structure in Python called list. And so there we go. Now all of those underscores are gone. Now, if you notice, I have some other red errors, right? So this one expected indented block. Well, of course it did. So the reason why it expects an indifferent block is because between this, this, and this, it expects to have something right here. That's the indented block. I don't have anything. But what we're going to do is we're going to say print if it finds Jupiter, F not in, I'm going to say Jupiter, uh, uh, not in application. And that, again, there's more complicated code that usually goes in validating these things, but we're not software engineers. We're going to call that an advanced level class when we're doing testing. And most data scientists don't test their code, which is a different type of tragedy if you don't have someone to do that. Okay, so Mars is welcome. And else, if there's anything else, meaning there's no condition, like we just catch all here, we'll just say F. Oh, why do I put F there even though I don't have stuff there? So we'll discuss that. F, welcome. Okay, so if you notice, I subconsciously put an F string in front of all of these strings here, even though I don't have a variable. And that's out of habit, mostly because what if I just want to put a variable in there and I'm like updating some code? If there's already an F there, I don't have to think about it. I can just update it. But oftentimes I'll just update it and not remember if there's an F there, and it'll cause a different error. So I kind of subconsciously always put F in front of all of my strings when it comes to print statements and things like that. You don't have to. You just have to remember to change it if you add like a variable here. So for example, this could be I don't know, 2. Yeah, because we're not iterating over the whole data set. We're just doing lists to demonstrate stuff. So I'll just print out 2. Um, but here, for example, I'm gonna run. So Mars is in there and it says welcome. So it's not checking each one. We're not doing a for loop to go through each one. We'll do that next on the next section. But if it's there, it's on Mars, it's there. If it didn't see anything, it'll print welcome and 2. And if it's all Jupiter, it would say not an application. So that's that. We are getting to the for loop time. I'm going to teach the most efficient way to write for loops in Python, though there are probably 5 or 6 different ways to write for loops in Python. We're not going to go over all of them because I want to show you the method that would make your code stand out the most as a more intermediate person, because most online stuff don't teach the most effective way all the time. I think that's changing. A few years ago, they were still teaching it the way that was more like a non-Pythonic way. And the word Pythonic just means the best way to do it in Python, to do it. And so that method is going to be enumerate. And so we're just going to say for X, Y, and enumerate planet, right? Print their home planet is Y. And I get this big old list of words. And enumerate basically go ahead and creates an index for you. A lot of the other methods won't have an index for you, and that can cause problems when you start trying to do certain types of applications. And this is also computationally faster, which we'll get into in a different lesson, and just not today. Um, so let's talk about um, we're about to do some interesting list comprehensions. All right. So as we're talking about the fastest or most Pythonic ways to do stuff, for the creation of simple for loops like we did there, oftentimes we don't want to leave our code open. And this is open code. Basically, it's not assigned back to a variable. In Python, you have the concept of a comprehension. And a comprehension basically assigns it back to the data type that you got it from. So this is a list. I can create a list comprehension. And it'll assign it back to a list for me. It'll create it out of whatever changes I needed to happen. Um, and save it as a variable or save it as a part of that if you've been working at pandas, that data frame or that series. Um, you can have a dictionary comprehension, you can have a set comprehension. Um, I don't think there's such thing as a tube comprehension. Actually, you can't have a set comprehension. What am I talking about? You have generated functions. We won't get into generators. I don't think they're necessary for entry level roles, and particularly data science and that space. Okay, so let's talk about this. What is a list comprehension? How do you set this thing up? So we're going to combine list comprehensions and functions actually, because why not? And so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a function. Well, actually, let's do this. I want to get food court down. So we're going to take a variable called food court. It's going to store the list, which is converting a data series, a panda series, into a list for using in pure Python. Right? That's one. The next thing we're going to do is I'm going to create a function called court. And this is going to help me calculate my receipts in the food court. And we're going to say if the value z is greater than 15, 15, we're going to say the new z is going to be equal to z times 5. Else, and we just want to actually make sure this meets standard. So tab, there we go. Just want to make sure it's not doing something strange. Else, then we're going to say if it's not greater than 15, I'm going to say z equals z plus $50. And what we'll do here is we'll return z. Now, that gives us a function. Now, what we're going to say, bill, we're going to be creating a bill. And of course, we're inflating their bill because, we're horrible aliens. And what we're going to do is I'm going to create a list coverage. So I'm just going to do 2 regular brackets. That is what method of calling a list. And it's the method of calling specifically a list comprehension. I'm going to say, I want to compute for the list that I'm telling you about, the court bill. And I want to, for X, Y, and enumerate. We're going to say food court. And remember, X is the index, Y is going to be the actual value. We're going to put Y right in there. That's going to give us bill. So we calculate it. If I say bill, we now have these list of numbers. Now, if I compare bill, the first value is 50. All right, let's just not scroll. Let's do this. Or say bill, we know bill is 50. So if I do FC, and let's do FC, so I do that. What am I doing? DF head. All right. Let's look at food court. Food court, the value in food court was less than 50. We upcharged them, was less than 15. So we upcharged them $50. And so the first value in bill was 50. So it worked. And that's good to know. And so there's basically a syntax for this. You never want this to get too big. If it's a really big kind of function type thing, you want to just throw your loops and if statements into a function and run it like I did here. Normally it'd be something bigger than that. This is a for loop, so you just do the simple for loop and the simple thing you want it to do. And it's going to be a lot more of your basic stuff. It should never be longer, really, than, to here, or maybe a little longer, but you're not running multiple levels of comprehensions typically. That's not the purpose. You should probably put some of that into a function if it gets long when you're trying to write it and run it. While we're at it, we can actually time the speed of this. Excuse me. And that is a kind of Jupyter cell magic. And while that's running, I'll show you what Jupyter magics are. Okay. So Jupyter is just an IPython notebook that is managed by someone else. Managed by, I don't know who manages Jupyter. But these are all the different ones that you can use to help you debug and work in your code. You can import Matplotlib. There's all different types of ones, and there's more than even this because when you install packages, some of them will have different Jupyter notebook magics that you can use to make running your code easy, right? Whole gigantic list of stuff because you can even use some of those cells to run other languages, which I think is cool. But let's go back. So now it tells me, and let's read this sentence out to you because code is in some languages. So it took 1.25 milliseconds plus or minus a picosecond per loop. This is the loop. So this is the mean on average, the standard deviation of time, and the number of runs it did. So 1,000 loops each for each of the runs. So that's cool. You can time your whole code by importing the time and the timer. I'm not doing that. We'll leave that for an advanced lesson. So for now, and we'll get into more complex things when we get back, we are going to take a time for you guys to do this. So you should already have this downloaded. You should already have this imported. Let's look at the data set here. We have channel title, and we have likes. So what you're going to do we'll do something more complex later. We'll do that. But let's just go to your code, and we're going to subtract 1,000. No, let's add 1,000 dislikes. Why? Because I like being mean sometimes. Well, I know I shouldn't like being mean, but who doesn't? It's kind of funny. It's not like it's affecting you. All right. So what you'll do, and this is like the power of the programmers on these platforms. Okay, so I should do right. So we don't need to do this. We don't need to do this. What we're going to do is we're going to create a list comprehension. that uses a function to change to add 1,000 dislikes to each row. All right, so let's pull up a timer and let's give you 10 minutes. Let's put on some beats. There you go. Okay, so let's get this here done. So let's create a list comprehension that uses a function to add 1,000 dislikes to each row. Um, well, first we would want to copy over our file path. Just like we did before. All right, then we're going to come down here and we're going to say df dislikes, df2 dislikes. All right, we'll create a function. All right. Mhm. There you go. All right. So now we're going to be fancy. We're going to start talking about dictionaries. All right. And we're going to start talking about dictionaries because that's how we do some of the more complex things, even in pandas and how things work, like group bys. And again, we're not getting too far into pandas because sometimes even in the data science or the machine engineering, they want you to do it without the package. So we're going to start with dictionary comprehensions, not dictionary comprehensions, but working with the dictionaries. We'll move into dictionary comprehensions, but it just won't be right now. All right. So what we kind of need to know is, what does Python have? Where was I? What does Python have that can help us without using pandas? And we're going to look at the default dict, the counters, and the collections um, kind of library that's built into it. Okay. And in order to use that, we can kind of iterate through the items and even some of the groups. And there's a few ways to do this. I'm gonna do it I'm gonna do it without a dictionary, and then I'm gonna do it with a dictionary. I think again we're off script. So let's do it this way. Um, And let's go back and explain a bit more on the right too. And actually, we're gonna need to import the entire data set. So we're gonna work inside of here. Okay. So what we're gonna do, um, this, okay. So this is printing everything out line by line. So what I did is we created a for loop, for line and read lines, which is a different type of for loop. Then the enumerate is not doing anything by index; it's just going and reading line by line. So what we kind of want to do, which we can do, is it'll read line by line through this because we, if we want to, let's say, um, calculate the average age per planet, we would need to group by each of the planets, and then we need to um, calculate the average age, which is why we usually just do it in pandas because pandas is um, 10 times easier, okay, to do this in. And I'm going to, when you don't know what your code is telling you to do. So we're going to do this a few different ways. And actually, I'm going to pull up, I think, the default dictionary um, uh, documentation. And let me read really quickly. Okay. Great. So let me show you the pandas way, and then I'll show you the Python way. Maybe my code is not. Yeah, I know I could use iter tools. Huh. But that should be in collections, right? Let's type specifically for iter. Yeah. So pandas and Python. There's normally, not always, an equivalent method, but there normally is an equivalent method. And you just have to figure out how to use it for that syntax, right? So I want to, I think, sort by and then group by. And this is why it's more confusing. I should just stick to my enclosed list of approved topics that Christina can do early in the morning, especially after a long work week. Okay, let's try this. Yeah, it's not a data frame. Let's do it like this. Hmm. I don't think I can do this right now because I'm not understanding the notes so I can explain. So I didn't write out the whole thing. Okay, back to my approved list of topics. Okay, let's copy this code. So what we'll do to make life easier. And actually, that's probably half my problem. Doing getting native Python and I switched between pandas and Python. I was like, that doesn't make sense. And I was doing it. Okay. So pandas, again, can send this to a dictionary based on the index, assuming that each line is a unique customer in our passengers list. It'll send it to that. Then what we can do is kind of create a new dictionary value for all the values. So we have values. See, this is what I mean. I'm pretty sure this is pandas. No, no, that's Python. My brain, it cannot do. Okay. So we're going to multiply the food court value by 5 for every passenger in the values. And actually, I'm going to do it like so. And so if we really wanted to um, look at the values, we could look at the old value and we could look at the new value. And the way we can do that is I can say, oh, this goes here. This is what I mean. Way too early. It's not a set as a dictionary. I broke things. Let me copy and paste my code back. Let's reload this. Fatigue. Okay. All right now. So we should have. We should have food court new. I think we're going to have to turn my brain on and debug some code. Let me pull up my notes on my dictionary comprehensions. Does it work? Yeah. It should work. What am I doing? Oh, I have an account. Yes, I can choose generators. I know I'm not on generators. I think because my brain doesn't understand what I'm doing, I'm probably going to have to stop here. Because my brain is like, duh, but what is it saying duh to me for? Why won't my code create the new dictionary key? I know I'm doing it now. I didn't even look right. Something's off with my data types. Yeah, I think my brain has died because I should be able to iter through it or use and update the value in the list comprehension. But it's not recognizing iter rows either. Yes, I know everything is crashing. I don't want to where's the conditioner? I put in the update. Well, I guess we're just stopping here for the day because I don't know. So that'll just have to be fine. And I will see you guys next time.